No one will ever say as many words about this as we have, as thoughtfully as we have. Like, it's just, it just doesn't matter. You shouldn't talk about it.
It's kind of depressing when you think about it that way. Welcome back, De Niro Nation, to our hero, De Niro, the only podcast that is watching and recapping every Robert De Niro film in random order. Although this is a special episode out of sequence, this is part 2 of our coverage of the new Netflix limited series 0 Day, starring Robert De Niro and a whole cast of talented performers. Real shame it wasn't in service of something better. But we're here with the second half of the episodes. There are 3 left to talk about. I get to handle recap duties today. Mike, you did a great job last time of consolidating nearly 3 hours worth of television into something manageable, digestible. I probably won't do that well, but I have notes. I'm ready to get into a few things about this. I'm really excited to focus less on the particulars of the episodes and more about just how they actually chose to wrap it all up. I'm so excited to talk about that with you at the end.
Me too.
We try to go into these things with an open mind, but it was kind of tough for me the last few days to force myself to open up the Netflix app and watch the remaining episodes of this show. You know, how was it for you, the experience? Was it begrudging, or were you looking forward to it in any sort of way?
I mean, it was begrudging. I watched it all today.
Oh, that's right, you did.
So I think that kind of tells you what you need to know about my mindset when I was
I spaced it out
coming into it.
I finished last night.
I watched it all today. Yeah, I watched the first half, episode 4 and half of episode 5 in one sitting, and then I came back and watched the second half of episode 5 and episode 6 in one sitting.
That's the way it was meant to be seen. They actually inserted a little intermission in the middle of episode 5.
Sure.
They were like, this is too intense.
Pretty sure I paused it in the middle of a scene because it was
that's so good.
I was watching it in the waiting room of Caroline's orthodontic surgeon, and that was when they came out and said that she was ready to go. So I just had to stop.
You should have asked them, hey, are you sure there isn't anything else you could do in there? Like, we're already here. I'm kind of in the middle of an episode of 0 Day. This is work for me. I have a podcast. I'm going to start telling people I do this for a living. What do you do? I have a podcast.
I watch 0 Day on Netflix for a living.
Yeah. So let's get into it, right? Like what? It's different because we've already set everything up, so we can just really get into episode 4, titled episode 4. That starts off 0 Day plus 19. So
God, it's been so long.
Yeah, for only 6 episodes, they really do cover a long period of time. So 0 Day plus 19, and we see this cold open in Chicago, Chirac, Illinois. It's in chaos after some news position lets us know that the 8th largest bank in the country has been hacked, and the president is imposing a financial freeze through the weekend. So you cannot, you can't do anything with your money. You can't take it out. Nothing's happening there. And
I would hate that.
I mean, listen, it would be pretty bad, right? Although people have credit cards.
Cash.
Right. Like, did the financial...
No, they froze everything.
Okay, they froze
no
all the assets.
Transactions. Yeah.
Pretty interesting. I think that's kind of...
It really made me feel like, I don't know, maybe I should be keeping some cash in the house. Like, maybe I should just keep like a few $100, like, just in case something like that ever happened. Because there's probably $11 in my house right now, and I would just be totally fucked if this happened in real life.
Right. Either there might be a financial freeze for 72 hours. You might just, get called up by a bro to go to the strip club. You never know when you need $100 in your pocket.
Yep. You keep money in your house?
Not. I have like a little bit, but I don't really know why. Like, I just like accrued a few 20s, but I never touch them because I never think to bring cash with me because it's a nuisance. I have a micro wallet. Yep. Mike knows what my wallet looks like. It's very tiny. It only holds 4 cards and a couple of bills.
I have a very small wallet, and Mike's wallet is half the size of mine. So
I love it so much, and I've thought about getting a bigger wallet, but then like whenever I do, I'll like be somewhere, I'll be out with someone, and like they take their wallet out. It's one of those giant, disgusting, like horrible ones that fits 8 cards, and like it's just stuffed to the gills. And I just think no. It's like reactionary. It's reactionary.
I'm a George Mullen style radical centrist. You can join those of us in the reasonable middle and get a bifold wallet, and you don't have to go all the way to like a jammed like George Costanza style trifold. Like, my wallet is like, it's pretty svelte, it just holds a little bit more than yours does. It's got that nice classy bifold.
That's why you love 0 Day so much, because you're such a radical centrist. You're like, I agree with President Mullen's speech in episode 1. I liked this scene, but not for the reasons that the show wanted me to, because we see the exterior of a branch of this bank, and there's an angry mob outside, and they break into the bank. They overrun the guards, and they break into the bank and like run to the tellers to start trying to withdraw their money. But I was just thinking about it, and like, how fucking stupid are these angry mobs in this show? They wouldn't be able to. What do they think is going to happen? That the bank teller who makes $15 an hour is going to be able to override this financial freeze?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that I remember in 7th grade, we watched The Monsters Are on Mulberry Street. It's a famous episode of The Twilight Zone. You ever seen it?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, it's classic. Yeah. Spoiler alert for The Twilight Zone for people who haven't seen it. This is germane to our discussion, by the way. The whole episode is about mobs and mob mentality. Anyway, there is this conspiracy in this neighborhood that there are aliens or like some kind of unseen force that's hurting people. And it creates this angry mob mentality that spirals out of control. And, the twist of the episode is there was nothing. Like, it was all just imagined hysteria on the part of the folks in the mob. And like the real villain was, that kind of like mob mentality fervor that people get sucked into.
Yeah.
And I remember being in 7th grade and like having a 7th grader's mentality about adults and their emotional world and thinking like, oh, could adults really be that stupid? Like, it doesn't really make any sense. And like now as an adult, like, I don't know. I think that being in a mob does make you really stupid. Like, I don't know if there's any thought to that kind of action, but like this was like totally realistic to me. Like, I think people are that stupid when they get sucked up into that kind of like.
Unfortunately, that kind of unfortunately, I think you're right. Like, you will never catch me in a mob. Not interested.
Same.
One, yeah. I barely want to be in like a concert environment. Like I don't want to be in big crowds to begin with. And if you're in a mob, you have to worry about stampede concerns. Everyone's yelling around you. I would not be interested in that. Exactly. Yeah. I would definitely be watching from the sidelines, making fun of those people. So after that, we see Matthew Modine, whose name Dreyer, I think, is his name. By the way,
I know his name by now. By the way, I noticed it in this episode. It's Richard Dreyer. They said it several times, and I couldn't. What?
I just said it was Dreyer.
Oh, I didn't hear you say that. What I thought I heard you say was that you still didn't know his name.
Yeah.
But maybe I like incepted that. But anyway, it's good that we both learned his name in this episode. He was one of the few holdouts for me. Names I hadn't learned.
Yeah, I'm just gonna when I do the edit, I'm gonna run that clip back just to just so we can double check what happened there. After that, we see Matthew Modine, whose name Dreyer, I think, is his name. By the way,
I know his name by now. By the way, I noticed it in this episode. It's Richard Dreyer.
So it's Dreyer, Matthew Modine, and he wants to be running the 0-day commission that was handed to Mullen, aka Robert De Niro. So definitely a power-hungry kind of Republican guy. We cut back to De Niro, who is interrogating.
Can we stop here actually for a second? I want to say something about it.
Sure.
It's interesting because you just said that, and like that's obviously true, right? But I find it very interesting in like a very like weak milquetoast way how they talk about the political parties in this show, but those words are never used. And even though it is kind of like subtextually obvious based on what the different characters' political positions are, like it's not said that Dreyer is a Republican and that Mullen is a Democrat. Like I find that interesting.
Listen,
just as an observation. Yeah,
I agree with you. This show is so fucking weak in its messaging. Yes, it really it's trying to play it so safe. It reminded me really like in this back half of Civil War, the A24 film that came out last year, that directed by Alex Garland, that you liked. And really left me cold. I mean, incredible year of IMAX experience, especially that final firefight. But it felt so like, like the authors, the writers are just thinking like, well, we can't label any of the people, like the characters within the show, because we want the message to be universal. And in doing so, it's so like toothless that I think it really is appealing to no one. And I think it's still not going to reach the people. Like it needs to reach the sort of dumbass who would participate in an angry mob. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah. I don't think that they like have the self-awareness to go like, oh yeah, I would be that fucking stupid. I should pay attention to what President Robert De Niro is saying. It just, I don't think it's ever going to work.
I don't agree with you at all about Civil War. And I actually, in a way that is very germane to this conversation, watching Zero Day made me disagree with you more about Civil War. But I want to talk about that more in my wind down. So
sure, hold on to that.
Come back around to that
for some spirited discussion.
Made some connections to Civil War in a similar way to you when I was.
That's great.
This. Yep. So
excited
to talk about it.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So, anyways, so De Niro is interrogating Dan Stevens' character Evan Green, the right-wing conspiracy talk show host, and he's doing this he's performing this interrogation with Carl, who's like his right-hand man in the Zero Day Commission. And he mentions Anna, the ghostwriter who passed away because her fucking car got hit by a train during the Zero Day attack. Truly statistically impossible, but yet it happened. And you can see like Carl subtly react, like he kind of glances over at De Niro, like, why is he talking about this fucking dead woman? But so people kind of suspect, okay, something's going on here with Mullen. And it's revealed that Dan Stevens basically had a group chat going with the Reapers, this domestic terrorist group. So he has associations with them and is willing to give up like names and email addresses, but he says that's all he has. And De Niro really pulls a 180 on his previous no torture stance and is like, let's torture him right fucking now. Him. Oh, absolutely. Yep. It reminded me of this moment. You ever watch the Adult Swim show Metalocalypse?
Yeah, I mean, I have seen some episodes. I could sing the song, but I probably haven't seen the scene you're thinking of.
No, I only mentioned it because it awoke this memory of the show because it's about this like really clueless death metal band. But their manager is this like really straight-laced businessman type, but he has like, a very like cruel side to him. And at one point he has this character, some like, a supporting character beaten up by like goons. And he tells the goons, put the boots to him, medium style. And they just start kicking this person like all over. And I just imagining De Niro saying that.
Put the boots to him, medium style.
Because they do pretty like legit torture. They put a plastic bag over Dan Stevens' head and start suffocating him. Yep. Yeah, it seems really bad. Still not sure what the end game is with capturing and torturing this incredibly prolific public figure, but sure. So we cut to Jesse Plemons' character, Roger, and he meets up with Alex, played by Lizzie Kaplan. I finally know their names. It took 3 hours for me to learn them. And they have a conversation that's boring as hell, but they do mention Nick, who is Robert De Niro's dead son and Alex's dead sibling. Afterward, Valerie is talking to Mullen about Anna, and he denies that anything's wrong. And he just says, like, I was just trying to throw Evan off his game, like in the interrogation. So I was just throwing a lot at him. It's like, okay, no one's buying it at this point, but sure. And Dan Stevens' character, Evan, meets with his lawyer, and his lawyer is really pushing him to just do whatever he can to expose the Reapers. He's really telling him, he's like, you do not have any rights. Like, all of those rights have been suspended. They've already tortured you. I really think you should give up these slimeball domestic terrorists.
I think that happened before the torture. Yeah, I think that happened before the torture. And I think it was like he like didn't believe his lawyer.
Oh, like, you think so?
And then like jokes on him because they like tortured the fucking shit out of him. But like his lawyer was telling him like, no, dude, like there are no constitutional protections here and you are not entitled to a lawyer. He tells him they only let him talk to him to like convince him to just comply. And then I suppose him when he does not comply. Yes.
I'm gonna take your word for it.
I don't think we ever saw the lawyer again after the torture scene.
There are a lot of characters that when we see them for the last time in the series, I didn't think about it at the time, but afterwards I was reflecting on the show and I thought that's how they wrapped it up with that character. Like that's where they left them. It's like we had 6 episodes and this is how you choose to do it. So Valerie visits this contact in the dead of night. It's a very like secretive clandestine meeting, goes to this guy's house and asks him about Proteus, wants more information about it in Waterford, Virginia. And the guy, he's like your classic, like old hacker looking computer science kind of guy and is surprisingly willing to discuss this incredibly top secret weapon with this woman. So that starts happening, and we see like a little montage of civil unrest growing in cities like Tulsa and Atlanta. The National Guard is deployed, and this is where it started working a little better for me. It's a real shame that because it's a 6-episode limited series, there's just all of this filler in the middle. But that's what I wanted to see more of earlier in the series, because there is a cheapness to this series. And anytime you see an angry mob in this show, and there are several, it's always like 50 extras or whatever that they like, they blocked off a little bit of New York City and they show them rabble rousing for 10 seconds. But like, I want to see like the military being deployed. I want to feel, and that's what was effective about.
There's a little bit of action in this back half. Yep.
Shit is escalating. Carl interviews Evan Green, and I think that's when they do the torture. Whatever, doesn't matter. Point is, he gets tortured. Enhanced interrogation.
Yep.
I love the sanitized term that we have for like fucking everything these days.
I mean, it's tough. It's a shame that it doesn't work because he really deserved it. So.
I don't think it's good to be socializing with domestic terrorist groups, but whatever.
I mean, like if you were going to torture anyone, like he's the guy who it should happen to, but
right.
It doesn't work. So
right. He's only sympathetic because we saw one scene of him being nice to his like kid's tutor, and because he's played by Dan Stevens, and we all like Dan Stevens.
Yeah. Handsome, charismatic guy.
And so now we come back to this character that we've seen a few times, but we haven't had much time with, this female CEO of Panoply. So she's kind of painted as like, I guess like an Elon Musk type a little bit. She's just like a tech mogul, like your generic tech mogul kind of figure. And she
her character sucks.
Her character really sucks. I completely agree.
She really brings it to new lows, I think, in the couple episodes where she's really prominent.
Such an underdeveloped character. And I don't understand why. They have as much time as like 2 moderately long films, and like you can't give us more to this character. She's not interesting. We're not sympathetic to her. But she's encouraging like these protests that are happening around the country about in response to the Zero Day Commission and like the removal of civil liberties. And De Niro agrees to meet with her. So afterwards, Valerie confronts De Niro about Proteus, and we are on the verge of I think one of the big discussions of today's episode. So Valerie confronts De Niro about Proteus. It turns out that Proteus is not a technological weapon. Instead, Proteus is a neurological weapon that causes symptoms like or whatever, issues like psychosis like and memory loss.
Experiencing.
Yes. Yeah. And De Niro hears this and he admits to having episodes. Now, should we talk about Proteus and do we talk about it now or do we talk about it later?
Yeah, I think that we can talk about this scene now, right? I don't know if we have to reveal. But I went through my notes before.
How did you feel about, let's just talk about how you felt about this reveal.
So many points in my notes where I was like, Proteus is coming up again. I wonder if what we're learning now will be revised again later. Mm-hmm. Like we review information about Proteus so many times during these 3 episodes, and like it was probably only 2 or 3 times, but it felt like there were like a dozen times where it's like, oh, actually that wasn't true. Now it's this, and it's so stupid. So in this scene, let's see, Valerie comes to tell Mullen what Proteus is, and he tells her that he's having those symptoms. Yeah. And the thing that really struck me about this scene is she's really chill about it. Like, Did that strike you? Like her reaction is just like,
it didn't.
Oh no, man, that's crazy. Like it's like, I don't know, like I'd kind of freak the fuck out. Like if my boss told me that and he had,
but you know
as
what?
we discussed last time, the most important job ever.
But you know what? I think the reason it didn't was because like this show only has one register, like emotionally. Every scene looks the same, feels the same. It's always characters. It's either characters getting the exposition from the news or just meeting with each other one-on-one or sometimes in a small group. The tenor never changes, and so like it's always presented the same. It feels very monotonous. So I guess I didn't think anything of it like in the moment. That is is an interesting point, though. My reaction to it was, and I think it was partially because there have been so many like twists, if you can call them that when she said Proteus is a neurological weapon that causes all of these symptoms that De Niro happens to be suffering from, I honestly thought, I was like, is this a misdirect? Because it struck me as such a stupid potential explanation for what we had been like experiencing alongside De Niro's character up until this point. I just thought that like, oh, it can't be. It's too dumb. Holistically, I'm like waving my arms around. One, the fact that by pure coincidence, it's a neurological weapon that would make De Niro experience all these symptoms. But two, De Niro was the president. He was briefed on Proteus, but the briefing was totally wrong. He went on like television and told the nation about Proteus, and no one was like, why the fuck is he talking about a top secret classified neurological weapon?
That did happen. Remember? Because after he went on TV and talked about it, I think Valerie went to see, what's his name? Lash, the director of the CIA. And he was like, that's not what he thinks he is. Why is he talking about that?
Why isn't, but why? Why does he know about it, but think that it's something entirely different from what it is?
I don't know that that's explained. Honestly.
It's really not. I mean, that was like such a cheap misdirect.
But, I don't know. Should we give it away now?
No. We'll get into it when we get into it.
We'll come back around to Proteus later.
We're going to have more to say about Proteus, don't you worry.
No, so we're going to talk about Proteus 25 more times.
We go back to Roger, played by the great Jesse Plemons, and he does this whole thing where, I don't know, he like checks a long range radio out of like some evidence locker, and he plays around with it, and he like basically tunes into some frequency where people are speaking to each other in code. It's like some whole fucking thing. But he's like writing shit down. I don't know. I don't know, whatever. Like that's happening. He's investigating this, and like concurrently, Valerie is trying to cut him out entirely of like the 0 Day Commission and have everything go through her. And again, like to your point in the last episode, wisely so, because she is a totally competent professional, and he is like a compromised drug addict who definitely should not be a part of that commission.
Yes. That it's never more apparent than in this series of episodes.
Right. Oh, absolutely. I cannot wait to get into the character of Roger later on. So Matthew Modine meets with President Mitchell. Was it Mitchell? Angela Bassett? Yeah, great. Good for me. The financial freeze ends, and protests start occurring outside of De Niro's house. He lives on a big plot of land, and there's a big gate out front. So they're protesting outside of the gate, which again, like he lives in the middle of the country. How angry and stupid would you have to be as a person to like drive however long it would take to get to his house and park your car and then just like yell through some gate where like you can't even see the house from there? Just like, I don't know, these people, they have too much time on their hands. Get a hobby. You start a podcast.
That's the way that, this is the way that I feel about all protesting. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. People in our, people whom we consider our like political allies would protest like this if this kind of thing happened. Like, I think it's like very realistic. Like, you don't think like radical leftists and like pro-libertarian, like small government people would be like very animated to almost an insane degree?
You're probably right.
This kind of occurrence.
Hashtag Occupy.
I don't know. All the mob stuff in this episode was like very believable to me. Like, people are this stupid.
I'm not saying it's unbelievable. I'm just commenting on like how fucking dumb I think those people are. That's all. I'm not saying it wouldn't happen in real life. I'm mocking that type of person. So at the end of the episode, we see a man buy a burner phone and send coded messages. He's sending them, and they're being intercepted by Roger. I didn't fully understand what was happening at the time. And then the episode really ends with De Niro meeting with the Panoply CEO, whose name I don't remember, and like doesn't fucking matter. She fucking sucks as a character. But that is the end of episode 4. Oh no, it's not. It's not even close. I'm sorry. I'm so off. I got to go faster.
You're doing a great job, man.
Oh, God.
You really struggle with this recap.
Oh, God. Okay,
I'm looking like you haven't even mentioned any of the important things that happened in this episode.
It was the end of that day. Okay, hold on. Okay, I'm gonna blaze through this. Okay, I understand now.
I was wondering if I took my notes wrong.
I was misreading my notes. Okay, let me redo that last part.
Oh, God.
So Roger does this whole thing with the long range radio where he's like intercepting coded messages. I didn't fully understand it at the time. Valerie makes the case that he should be excommunicated from the Zero-Day Commission because of course he should. He's a compromised drug addict. Matthew Modine meets with the president. The financial freeze ends and there's a protest that begins outside of President or Mullins, Robert De Niro's country house. And De Niro meets with the Panoply CEO who sucks. So now it is 0 day plus 21, and we see more protest footage. Protests escalate in Illinois, and Dan Stevens' supporters demand his release because, he is, being illegally fucking held and tortured. So I kind of get it. Sometimes you got to hand it to that side. De Niro video calls the president because there's so much in this show that is delivered through fucking screens, news on the TV, video calls, whatever. Mitchell is it is realistic. It's just, it's so fucking flat and gray. It's not dynamic.
I was thinking in this series about how much I hate the cinematography in this show.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The longer it went on, the less I liked it.
Are so much bluer and grayer and more flatly lit than even the first three were. Like it's right. Really terrible.
I'm colorblind, and like I was thinking like, damn, this shit is muted. Oh God, it's so lazy. I get why they do it.
Just jack this out. In Windows Movie Maker, they went into the
I'm going to my monitor settings and I'm just turning the saturation up. De Niro. This is when De Niro turns pro torture. So I apologize. And his wife insists that he gets a psych evaluation. So she's like very skeptical. Like to your point in the last episode. What?
I'm just laughing at like. You like didn't believe me when I said that the torture happened after the thing with the lawyer, but like, I'm realizing now that it was like 25 minutes after.
Oh, it was so long. It was way later. Happened. Yeah. So whatever, we already covered that. We Rochambeau'd it. He gets tortured. Roger goes to a bar and he gets extorted because again, he's the most compromised operative I've ever fucking seen in this sort of media, political thriller. He immediately gets extorted and has to prove that De Niro is unfit to continue leading the Zero-Day Commission. De Niro undergoes the psych eval, and while it's happening, he hears the song "Who Killed Bambi" again, but like he's wise. He's wizened up to it, and he says, "I don't hear anything," and continues on, and he aces it. Yeah,
this scene was so funny because like she's asking like what music she's playing, and like I don't know. I mean, listen, you're more of a psychologist than I am. That doesn't make any sense, right? It's like, why would she be assuming that was the type of hallucination he was having? It's like, what are the chances you'd catch somebody with that lie? It would work like 1% of 1% of the time. Would you be talking to someone and the particular way that they were cognitively compromised was that they were having auditory hallucinations of music? Like, it's like to waste time in the eval asking a question that is almost never going to uncover an issue. Like, it struck me as totally absurd and like very contrived storytelling.
Yeah, she had a copy of the script.
We can hear that he is hallucinating music. Like, right, it's like Plinkett in the Star Wars reviews. Like, did you read the script? Like, she must have had the script. She read that description of the audio design.
Hey, I have really fun news for you. In my notes next, I have Dan Stevens gets tortured. This is when it happens.
Yes, I noticed that. When I noticed that you were you said the episode ended a full 8 paragraphs before I did, and I was like, I think you missed something.
Oh my God. They go on forever. So Roger, there was something about like Roger having hacked, I guess like earlier, like years ago, he hacked De Niro and Lizzie Kaplan's phones. Is that what happened?
Yeah, I don't think it was De Niro's phone. I think it was Lizzie Kaplan's ex.
Oh, okay. Her and partner. Her ex. Okay.
Like romantic partner. Yeah. And then her. Correct. Yeah. I don't think De Niro had anything to do with it.
Okay. And then we get a scene of goons breaking into Roger's really nice, swanky apartment. And they do this whole thing where they basically kill him. So they like kill him, inject him with heroin, strip his body, and then like drown him in the bathtub. So they make it look like, an OD. How'd you feel about this scene? R.I.P. Roger.
Yeah, I mean, R.I.P. Roger. It really surprised me, honestly. If I had to pick a main character who I thought would die, I guess it would have been Roger. But I was pretty surprised that it was happening before the end of the first 2/3 of the runtime.
Yeah,
like it's like if we were in a movie, we wouldn't be even starting the third act, and they just killed like he's probably the second most important character in the show after De Niro.
Yeah, I thought there would be a bigger, I don't know, blow up over, you know, him being compromised. Like I thought there'd be like something more dramatic. So the way that they handled this
It's
really reminded me
the way this all happens. Like
and it felt reminiscent of the film Michael Clayton. And I don't want to get into spoilers too much about that movie because it's it's a fantastic movie, incredible legal thriller. Really but there is a similar sort of scene at one point, but the way it's handled there, like it truly is like very effectively unnerving, like a really like creepy scene, like seeing these operatives kill someone with such precision and like so clinically. They kind of try to do that here, but it was just kind of boring. It's just like, okay, well, like Jesse Plemons' character kind of sucks, and like I get what they're doing, and like whatever. Like, you sure?
The way the scene was directed, I agree, was like so. Like to your point about the entire show having the same like level of energy or tone, like it's so low energy and there's like no tension to it at all in spite of the stakes of what's happening.
Yeah,
that I actually didn't think they were going to kill him. Like until the scene changed, I was waiting for them
show.
to pull
It keeps
him
you on
up,
your
and
toes.
it having just been like them trying to like torture him into complying. Like it did not. It just wasn't shot and directed like a scene of like one of the 2 or 3 most important characters in this show getting fucking iced like way earlier narratively than you would expect it to happen. Like, I don't know, very, very weird storytelling.
So now we're almost at the end of this episode for real this time. It's 0 day plus 22. Valerie enters De Niro's office to share the dramatic news that Roger is dead. Oh no.
No.
What?
Hold on.
What? Hold on what?
There was more that happened after that was important to mention. There were 2 things that you didn't mention.
What? Tell me.
Actually 3.
Okay, I can't wait to hear them.
Oh no, I'm sorry. You just again erroneously announced that the episode ended. But you were about to say something that
I did not announce that the episode ended.
Valerie coming in to tell Mullen that Roger is dead happens at the end of episode 4, not at the beginning of episode 5.
I didn't say we were in episode 5. So now we're almost at the end of this episode for real this time. It's 0 day plus 22.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said the day ended.
Jesus Christ.
All right, go ahead. I'm just primed for it.
Yeah, okay. Sure. Anyways, where was I 2 minutes ago? So Valerie tells Mullen that Roger's dead. There's a press conference, and this hacker group called Sinecure claims credit for the bank hack. Matthew Modine pushes De Niro's wife to testify because she's like a judge she's like up for a federal appointment or something like that. So he's trying to get her to like testify that he's not of sound mind. De Niro walks through his house in slow motion, haunted by the sound of the song Who Killed Bambi? And he's like flashing back, and he finds his son dead from an apparent OD. He's like a teenager. He's got long, brown hair. He's like on the ground with the whatever, or, you tie around your arm when you're doing heroin. And then he's like, it cuts to him seeing Roger's body in the bathtub. And I guess just the only, I was just going to ask one question.
I think maybe you're going to say the same thing I'm about to say.
Okay. What I wondered here was because it's clearly been a while, like Mullen had to have been informed and like come over there or whatever. There's already an investigation happening. Pretty bright outside. And I'm just thinking like, did they not take his body out of the bathtub?
Yeah, I put 7 question marks after it when I wrote it in my notes.
Yeah, I'm glad we both wanted to know more about this.
There's no way it's been less than 7 or 8 hours since that happened. And like, because it is bright as fucking day outside. Like, it's like at least 9 o'clock in the morning when Mullen comes
floor
over
to ceiling windows in this apartment. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, I mean, 1, I think they'd have taken his body out of the bathtub. But 2, I think he'd be like a deformed, bloated mess if they had.
That's the thing, right? He looks exactly the same as when they held him underwater.
Like, he looks completely healthy.
They didn't take him out of the fucking bathtub when they found it, or
they only left him in because dramatically Mullen needs to see
it's a better
him
visual
as he was when he died, so it has that like kind of thematic symmetry with the flashback to his son. But it's like, I don't know, like I get it, wanted to do something that's thematically poignant, but like it has to make sense and be like narratively legible, or it just makes you think about how stupid it is, which ruins.
Very stupid. And I think
dumb.
I think it still would have worked if we saw like his corpse like on, whatever, just like out laid flat on
or if they found some contrivance to get Mullen over there at night, like an hour or two.
Right. Whatever. There's something that alerted. Yeah, sure. Yeah. It really crazy. It made me wonder, like I was thinking like for in-universe explanations, do you think like Mullen showed up and was like, well, I'd like to see him like as he was. Can you put him back in the tub?
How was it? Yeah.
Can you reinsert? Let me remind you that I have total control right now. Can you put him back in the tub? Refill the tub.
It might be unconstitutional for you to put this body back the way it was, but there is no constitution in this apartment while I'm here. This is zero.
I need you to do it because I want to think about my dead son.
Anybody have a record player?
Yeah, exactly. He should just have AirPods. He could just play that song all the time. And the episode finally does end with De Niro looking at and closing his crazy guy notebook with Who Killed Bambi scrawled everywhere. There you go. Fantastic.
I wrote a lot less about episodes 5 and 6 as I did about that one. So I think that's because less happened in them. So I think you might be more succinct with your other ones. I just want to give a 2/3 report here at the end of this episode.
Oh, sure.
I actually thought this episode was quite good relative to the other stuff in the show. And I remember thinking at the end of it, like, oh, am I going to like the rest of this now? But episodes 5 and 6 were not as good as episode 4. So it kind of like returns, like a lot of stuff happens in this episode. Like you said, we see some action, like there are a lot of character moments, a lot of stuff happens to the characters. There's a lot of tension and a lot of conflict. And then I feel like we go back to the same meandering pace narratively of like episodes 1
interesting.
in 5 and 6. Let's see how you feel after we're done.
Let's talk about it. Okay, let's start episode 5. We're starting off at 0 day plus 23. So Dan Stevens is released. He's visibly shaken, as I think most of us would be if we were tortured. And his lawyer is guiding him through a mob of the press. And he says, "I just want to go home." He's like, "That's it." And let's talk about it now. This, unless I'm mistaken, this is the last time we see his character, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
That's
interesting.
That's how it wraps up. Unbelievable. Unfucking believable how unceremonious this character's like arc has been. That's how it wraps up. De Niro tortures him over like almost nothing. This like specious link between him and the Reapers. He gets out and then that's it.
Well, I mean, the link wasn't that specious. Like, I don't know. Like, again, torture doesn't work.
Thank God Dan Stevens had a fucking group text with the Reapers because the original link
he had the group text with the Reapers, and then he wiped those hard drives because
that's true. He wiped the hard drives. That's right.
I think that if you were Mullen and you saw like, oh, he has text threads with the people we know did the attack, and oh, when he knew we were coming, he wiped all of his hard drives, I think you would very logically conclude like, this is a smoking fucking gun. Like, it was very stupid of him to wipe his hard drives. Like, it makes him look so guilty.
But
like,
the original link was him having a George Orwell quote on his website.
Yes, so that was specious. Yeah, but like ultimately, what led Mullen to do the torture was not as specious. Like, he had I think a reasonable course to that conclusion.
It's reasonable torture. So De Niro encourages his wife to testify honestly before the committee. But she asks him, like, if you were going through all this shit, like, why didn't you tell me? And he has no explanation. He has no good response.
He's like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
that's just marriage, baby.
Yep. Back in Washington, D.C., Matthew Modine, Speaker of the House, meets the president and is really like pushing her to kick De Niro out of the 0 Day Commission so that he can take over. The president, Angela Bassett, she expresses some regret over even like starting the 0 Day Commission, and we get more news position because of course we do. This show is so fucking boring. There's international backlash over the torture of Dan Stevens' character.
Yeah.
And I thought it was
just say,
sure.
Yeah,
I won't stop
about
you.
The specific scene. I'm glad you're mentioning it. I wanted to make sure I caught it. Like, you just observed how unceremonious the end of Dan Stevens' character was, and I didn't realize that at the time. But like now I'm realizing that this is actually the last appearance he has.
Yeah, you're right.
And so the last thing we hear about him, we don't see him. We just hear like, oh, he's talking about how he was tortured and people are really upset about it. Right. Like, that's the end. Like, the end of him is news position. Like, that's like so funny.
Well, once again, I guess for the final time, I'll say, how fucking crazy was it from like the 0 Day Commission's perspective? Like what was Mullen's plan here? He takes this guy, he captures this guy in the dead of night out of his house, fucking interrogates and tortures him, and then just lets him go a couple days later. And like, I don't know, like, how does that not become like such a huge political like sticking point for years to come? Oh man, Dan Stevens could probably run for office in this world in a couple of years. Right.
Like, yeah. Right. He's this universe's Trump. Like, right.
I was
popular figure, like riding on populist rhetoric. Like,
right. Imagine if Biden took in Alex Jones and just like fucking tortured him in New York City and then let him go. Like, Alex Jones would be able to credibly say the Democrats and Biden Biden was in the room when I was tortured. Oh shit. Well, I guess I don't want to vote for the pro-torture party or like but anyway, so that's it. It's over for that character. Sure. Whatever. Carl and Valerie discuss Roger's death. De Niro's wife testifies in front of the committee, and she's sassy about it. She's kind of pushing back on Matthew Modine a little bit, and she's sticking up for her husband, sticking up for her man. I respect that. We cut back to the war room, and De Niro's distracted and ignores some revelation Carl had about deep faked photos. What were the photos of?
Say it again. I don't know if I remember this.
They're walking through the war room, and Carl mentions like how some photographs fooled them because they were the most advanced deep fakes they've ever encountered.
Oh, I think that this was that falsified evidence that that Roger was given by Lyndon in episode 3 that he gave to Mullen. I think that's what they were referencing.
Gotcha.
It was like acknowledging that was falsified, but apparently falsified in such a way that like they couldn't figure it out. I don't know if I believe that. Like that's even possible. Honestly, they're really smart people looking at these photos who know the tricks, right?
Listen, we didn't notice when we looked at the photos that the hands all had 6 fingers each. We were totally fooled.
This new version of Midjourney is just out of control. Like, it's making the most realistic photos of Dan Stevens.
These new LLMs are out of this world.
Domestic terrorists.
Yeah. So Valerie advises De Niro not to attend Roger's funeral in case, whatever, it's compromised in some way. But De Niro insists. We go to the funeral, and I wrote R.I.P. to a boring, shady dude. It is really unfortunate because Jesse Plemons, he has charisma. He's a talented performer, but they really did give him nothing during those episodes. Really depressing.
Let's just pour one out for him though, because he was looking very svelte in this show.
Yeah, even when he's been drowned and underwater in a bathtub for 8 hours.
He's looking tight.
It looks exactly the same. De Niro tells Lizzie Kaplan, his daughter Alex, that it was an OD. They talk about they're talking about the son, right? They're talking about the dead son. And that's when he says, he tells Alex that it was an OD, but she suspects that it was suicide. So they really they don't agree on this. Really fell flat for me because we don't know anything about the son or his relationship with De Niro. I mean, it's implying that De Niro is his grief is so intense that he can't acknowledge the possibility that maybe it was suicide, but because
that would be his fault.
Right. But we don't interrogate that any deeper. So it's just it's thrown out there in the 5th out of 6 episodes. We should have gotten more with the son leading up to this.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that we're supposed to, I think, agree that it was a suicide. Because I don't know, Mullen's it was before this or after this that he gives his little speech to Sheila about how he was when he was the governor of New York is the implication of this, or maybe the mayor of New York City, that he saw his son out skateboarding and he did a trick that he hadn't been able to do before, and he almost went out and complimented him, but then he got a work call and never told his son a compliment about skateboarding, and that's really clumsy storytelling. But I think from that we're supposed to extrapolate this guy was a pretty shitty dad. He was way too focused on his job to be involved in his son's life, and maybe the way he would have needed him to be to grow up to be an emotionally successful person. I mean,
I've heard, I've read before that when people are on their deathbeds, one of their most common regrets is that they didn't work more. So that's what Mullen was thinking of. He was like, well, I got to take this call. I got to be on more calls.
They were doing the budget, okay? That was the justification. They were doing the budget that day.
It was infrastructure week. So De Niro finds a cryptic note from Roger in the back of his notebook about offshore deposits from Lyndon, as played by Clark Gregg, or is it Greg Clark? Again, people with 2 first names, very confusing to me. And now it is 0 day plus 25. It's been almost a month since 0 day. Society has not crumbled. Weren't we given like a 48-hour timeline before things devolved into like warlords?
That's not what it was.
Oh, okay.
It was 48 hours if everything went offline.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, that makes more sense. Okay, that's more plausible to me. So De Niro is exiting a helicopter, I think in DC or something like that, and he says he's never felt better. He meets the president and Valerie, and Angela Bassett, the president, is saying like, hey, like everyone's expecting me to replace you with Matthew Modine, but I'm just gonna like entrust that you're going to get this shit figured out quickly and like let you do your job. Modine calls Kaplan because they're clearly in cahoots over something, and he's pissed about De Niro staying on the commission. We go back to the war room, and they do this whole tech hacky fucking bullshit scene where they manage to like spoof the bad guy's radio signal. So they like tap into it and they do some voice modulation, and De Niro fakes being one of the bad guys and manages to like arrange a meeting. And they identify one of the people involved. His name is Blake Felton, which I wrote down as the whitest name ever. And so they go and arrest Felton, and then the 0 Day Commission raids the Panoply CEO's mansion. So this is a pretty major scene in this episode. They conduct this raid. I think it's like, yeah.
And the reason why they raid the Panoply lady's mansion is because they already kind of suspected her based on some other stuff. And then he worked for a company that was acquired by Panoply. Yeah. Like, that's the connection. It's through arresting Blake, whitest guy ever, Felton, that they finally got to Monica.
Yeah. Yep. Good call. So she's live streaming this raid, which, yeah, sure, makes a ton of sense. Like, she's live streaming the raid, and the commission's a disaster. Everything's kind of going, sideways. They cut her radio off, and she basically, like, it ends with her saying that she will only talk to De Niro and Valerie and like on the phone. So she talks to them and reveals that she is aware that De Niro and Valerie have a secret love child from their illicit affair. And apparently, like, he pulled a Bill Clinton, and like back when he like all this shit went down, he just like lied to the country and like completely denied it.
Sounds like he got away with it, though, unlike Bill Clinton.
Yeah, he did not have sexual relations with that woman. Gunfire erupts, chaos ensues. No one knows who started it. It wasn't on the Panoply side. It wasn't the federal police. And then the federal security, they look like SWAT, but they storm the mansion, and Carl gets shot, but he survives. Thank God, because Carl, such an interesting character. Just like, God, I really hope Carl's okay.
Yeah. You also missed another really important thing here.
What's that?
Before the gunfire starts, Monica is using a radio to try to contact the Reapers. And so it's made very explicit in this scene that she was working with them, and they've iced her out. Like, they're not answering, and she gets really pissed. They're just like leaving her hanging out to dry. So now we know that she is like an important person in the attack. That is confirmed. Unlike Evan Green, who like was just a dumbass,
a dipshit,
who was associating with terrible people, but like was not complicit in any meaningful way in what happened.
So now it is 0 Day plus 26, and we're getting more news position. I wrote it down so many times, the word news position. So Alex is watching the news. It's De Niro's throwing a press con. He's holding a press conference linking Monica to the 0 Day.
Conference.
He's throwing a press conference.
And my like noisemakers. Like, we're having a 0 Day press conference.
He went to Party City. He got balloons and everything. And he links the Panoply CEO Monica to the 0 Day attack. Back in the war room, we're coming back to Proteus. They talk about how they couldn't detect any trace of Proteus in the office or like anywhere, like on the premises. So that had me questioning, like, how are we going to conclude this Proteus situation? We don't have the conclusion yet, but it made me wonder, like, okay, were they right about Proteus? Is it a neurological weapon? Was De Niro actually affected by it? It's like, it's setting these questions up because and it really made me wonder, like, how are they going to try to stick this landing? We're not there yet, but we're getting close. De Niro tells Valerie that, like, when this is all over, when they're on the other side of it, he wants to meet his love child, that I guess he just, like, Valerie's been raising on her own. And the daughter doesn't know that.
I think he gave her money?
I would hope so. I don't know.
I would also hope so, but it's not stated.
Yeah. It's not cool if he doesn't. Alex calls Matthew Modine, and she's like demanding that he pull the plug on whatever plan they have going. And Modine refuses. He like tells her to kick rocks. So she pulls out a radio. Oh my God, she's part of this 0-day group, it seems like. My goodness, what a twist. Apparently the FTC was investigating Panoply for antitrust violations, and the episode ends with De Niro getting a late night call. Monica was hanged. Yeah. End of episode.
After the thing about Alex using the radio, I wrote, are we getting an even dumber plot twist? And listeners.
Hell yeah, baby.
The answer is extremely yes.
It's a resounding
we'll
yes.
learn in the final episode. Yep.
Oh God, it's so good. Yeah, we're really like setting the stage for the 6th episode and the conclusion. And I really I just powered through at that point, but I was really wondering like, how are they going to do this in a narratively satisfying way? I'm so excited for the final, like, oh yeah, we're doing it. Should we just get right into it? Episode 6, the finale. Yeah. So we start off on 0 day plus 27, and the Monica's death is dominating the news. Alex meets Matthew Modine in like this little inner circle group. Basically, this is so fucking funny. So she like walks into this meeting of like the inner sanctum of this whole conspiracy, and it's Matthew Modine and like other elected representatives, and she like comes in hot. And she's like the conscience of the group, telling everyone, I think we need to come clean about orchestrating this whole fucking thing and the murder of the Panoply CEO. And Matthew Modine, like, which is totally fucking insane. Like, I've never been in this sort of situation, but like, in for a penny, in for a pound. I don't think you get to propose that after all of the dark deeds have been done. And if you're dumb enough to suggest it, then I think you're gonna get killed pretty immediately.
Right. That was the thing.
Is there a dumber character than Alex?
I was surprised they let her leave, honestly.
Right.
Because they're not going to try to kill her. Right. It's really odd. Like they just let her go. And I feel like I was thinking like if I had been Matthew Modine, I would have been like, I don't know, kind of feels like there's a 50-50 chance she's going to go tell someone. So I think we have to ice her. Like,
right.
To your
she's
point,
clearly
like, yeah.
Yeah. Or like try to keep her. Yeah. Right. Well, there's a moment at the end of that conversation where Modine like is like, oh, I'll get you a ride and like take you home. And you can tell she's suspicious of him at that point. And she's like, no, I'll get my own ride. But I'm thinking like, I'm surprised they're letting you leave.
They can still have you followed, man.
Right. Like just tail her, go back to her house and just like, pull a Roger on her or something. Oh shit. I did a lot of people on heroin. Later she goes into
her house and I was like, oh, she's about to get killed, but it's just Mullen in there.
Right.
Like, it's like there was like no drama fallout and whatever. We'll talk about it when the episode ends because this doesn't make any sense to me narratively.
Yes, we shall. So we're back in the war room. There's a call happening. The 0 day malware, apparently it was spread through Panoply's apps. And then like once it was on people's phones, then it just spread to nearby devices. All these, it's the Internet of Things, all these smart devices. You don't need a smart refrigerator. You're going to 0 day us with that bullshit. Kaplan or Alex calls her dad over the phone and is like, she's on her way home in her car or whatever. And she's telling him like, okay, I need to tell you something. I'll wait until I see you. And we get a code orange. It's a mass blackout nationwide. Everything goes dark. Airports, hospitals, mass transit. It all fucking shuts down. Like we see someone fucking flatline in a hospital. This is what I was waiting for. I wanted to see like what is the nightmare scenario as you referred to it in our first episode about this show. Like that's what this show needed. A little bit of life injected into it. I don't just want to see a few small mobs complaining about dumb shit. I want to see society crumbling. And like that's what we needed some more of. So this happens, and De Niro and his wife are at home, and his head security guy comes in and is like, we need to get you out of the house. Like there have been threats made on you, so we're going to take you to a security facility in Cortland. And I thought about this, whatever. It needed to happen dramatically, I guess. But I was thinking like, I don't know, they're in like this house in the middle of like rural New York, and the angry mob that has formed outside of his home can't even get through the steel gate. So like, I don't know. Can't he just hang out in the basement like overnight or something, like in his rumpus room?
Yeah.
Like you're going to get into a car and drive through this I don't know. Like, yeah.
I was trying to understand this too. Because like when they said they were going to evacuate him, I assumed it would be in a helicopter. And so like maybe all air traffic is grounded because the flight control
I would assume,
can't operate.
Because I said airports. Yeah,
like,
I wrote airports, but I meant air traffic control.
If all flights are grounded, then wouldn't they very easily and safely be able to make an exception for like one of the 2 or 3 most important people in the country to be evacuated on a helicopter? Like, this does feel very contrived to me.
Yeah.
Like, I think that in a situation like this where they'd grounded air traffic, one of the reasons would be so if officials or like military personnel or something needed to fly, it would be safe. Like they'd have a carve out for those kinds of scenarios. And I do think they only drive him so the next scene can happen.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. So they decide to take the car. They take their big old SUVs, their Chevy Suburbans or whatever the hell they are, and they drive up to the gate. There's like 2 or 3 SUVs or something in this convoy, and the protesters are outside of the gate chanting "Fuck George Mullen," and shit finally goes down. The convoy gets ambushed, it gets attacked, and this is pretty metal. The SUV in front of Mullins gets blown up, I think by like a Molotov cocktail. Pretty cool, like seeing an actual explosion in this show where it's mostly just scenes of gray and protests. And basically the mob rushes the cars and they start like, they're banging the cars with bats and shit. And, it's unsettling, but they're safe in the car. But then like they manage to break through the glass and they like drag the driver and passenger out of the SUV. So it's just Mullen and his wife in the SUV. And I thought to myself, aren't these bulletproof? He's a former president. Yeah. Doesn't he get a bulletproof Suburban? They managed to smash the glass with a bat.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to say about the Molotov cocktail thing. It's like, how did they blow up?
It wouldn't matter. Right. It wouldn't work.
It's supposed to, like, I assume be like bulletproof. Like, I would imagine it's like surrounded by like fire retardant material in some way that would protect it from that kind of explosion. Like, it's like the Secret Service has this stuff. Like that's their job to have this kind of equipment. That doesn't make any sense.
It was in the budget, it was in the last budget cut. Sorry, we can only get you a regular Suburban.
It's a Doge at work.
Right. Listen, Mullen, we could bulletproof a Tahoe, but that is a smaller SUV. And he's like, no, I want the cargo space. Sometimes I go to Home Depot. I work on projects. I need to be able to haul 4x8s or whatever, 8x4s. So like shit's going down. It seems like they're going to be fucking torn apart.
To shreds, you say? Well, how is his wife holding up? To shreds, you say?
And then these very tactical-looking gunmen come in from the woods, led by Lash. So they come through, they fire their guns in the air, and they disperse the crowd. And so they save Mullen and his wife, and they decide they're going to fake Mullen's death, at least temporarily. So De Niro has gone underground at this. Mullen has gone underground at this point. So at Valerie's house, she hides her daughter because someone's knocking on the door late at night, but it turns out it's Mullen's wife. So they all have a little powwow, whatever. There's gridlock while De Niro's driving through New York City and decides to get out and walk with his men, which I thought was pretty insane.
Insane.
Like, they're
faking his death. He's going to be seen by people. He's like the most recognizable person in the country, and they are in the process of faking his death.
Not only are they trying to fake his death, but there was literally just an angry mob of people willing to like rip him apart. And like, I don't know, you don't think any of these angry mobsters, right? Yep. No one's going to notice him and go, wait, that's the guy we want to rip apart. So they get out and walk. It's the dead of night. And this is what you referred to earlier. Kaplan arrives home. And so she enters her place and De Niro's waiting for her inside. And she reveals the whole conspiracy to him and us, the viewers. So basically, Matthew Modine and the Panoply CEO planned it, and she agreed to help because of some misguided moral attempt to like scare the American population straight. And I wrote a quote. She says, "We took a big chance to change things for the better." And I just thought like the chance was like a horrific cyber attack that for some reason
destroy society.
Yeah, that for some reason you thought would like unite people around a common enemy instead of like just like further like all the polarization. Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly what it did. She's very regretful that 3,000 people fucking died. And that's why she wants to come clean. And at one point, De Niro is like talking to her about this and tells her, we could all do more, but we do our best. And it was just another example of this show's like milquetoast, boring, centrist politics. It was just like, oh, you're just we're almost 6 hours into this, and you're still saying nothing of use, like nothing of substance, like whatever. And I wrote, Alex should be in federal prison. So I can't wait to see how they handle it with her. But like, how did you feel about Alex at this point? Like, were you sympathetic to her at all? I thought she's the most naive, late 30s career politician you could possibly imagine.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I felt sympathy for her because she was in a really bad situation. But I mostly felt sympathy for Mullen, who like probably was having these kinds of arguments with his kids for like their entire childhood because like, you know, he's like a boring centrist Democrat. So there's no way anything he's doing would ever be enough for anyone under the age of like 21. Yeah. But like, I felt really bad for him in this scene because it feels like his daughter's like 40 years old and she still has those like dumb ideas.
Right.
About things, and he's trying to tell her like, and to your point, like the politics of the show are very milquetoast and boring, but like he is correct that like this is get political about it, right? Like this entire political moment that we're living in right now is because people think that like intractable problems have not been solved because people have not had big enough ideas. And it's like, actually the reason is because these problems are fucking intractable. And everybody is trying their best except for the bad people. But like the people who are actually trying to do a good job are trying their best. It's not like there's some secret conspiracy to like leave things bad. Like it's like if only the bad centrist Democrats actually cared about fixing these problems, they'd be fixed. It's like, I don't know. No. You know, there's a very powerful opposition party and like taxes are really unpopular, but the deficit is also really unpopular. And it's like there is not an easy way to solve these problems.
So back in the war room, power has been restored. De Niro leaves in a helicopter, which, I suppose he couldn't do during the blackout. So Matthew Modine gets a call from an unknown number, and it's De Niro, baby. De Niro he says it's time for them to meet. So they meet up, and in the dead of night, and De Niro calls Matthew Modine a traitor, which, like, yeah, he definitely is. But Modine disagrees, and you know, De Niro gives a big old speech because it's the finale of this show. And he says, every dictator that ever seized power always said it's just temporary. And you know what was left when they were finished? Graveyards and ruins every single time. And it really reminded me of this edit of Star Wars that's on YouTube by the Auralnauts, where they like overdub scenes from the movies of C-3PO's character. Yeah, just yelling. Yep. When he's looking out at the desert wasteland of Tatooine and he yells to R2-D2,
wait, where are you going? Isn't this what you wanted? Sand and bones? As far as the eye can see?
Sand and bones as far as the eye can see.
Oh, man. So good. I got to rewatch those sometime when I'm not watching Robert De Niro films for this podcast.
That was a great moment for us right there that I instantly knew exactly what.
Yeah, I'm glad you knew what I was I'm glad you knew what I was teeing up. That's great. That's good. So Matthew Modine, basically, his proposal to De Niro is like, listen, I'll step down when the time is right, like at the end of my term. But De Niro wants blood. He wants arrests. You know, he wants to see heads roll for this. But Modine, because he's a smart political operative, he says like, hey, if you try to fuck me, you're also going to like royally fuck up your daughter's life because she is complicit. So he's like using her complicity as leverage, which, yeah, I mean, who knows how he's going to play this? That's a tough call. Like impossible to say what you would do in that sort of situation. I don't know. It's just like, it's not run of the mill. My kid is a dumbass kind of stuff. It's like, she is effectively a domestic terrorist, right? I don't know. Yeah. Tough to be sympathetic to that. I don't know. I really do think she needs to be in federal prison.
I don't know if I'd turn my own child in, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know. I would turn your child in. We're into sort of the final moves of this whole episode. We're really reaching the end here. It's the next morning, and this was interesting to me. They no longer had 0 day plus N, I guess because it's been resolved. Do you think that makes sense? I would have kept it going.
Yeah, I don't know, I guess. I mean,
I wanted to know how many days it was in total. I mean, they mention it like in sort of a general sense, but I just thought it was interesting that that's when they would choose. They chose during the last couple of scenes of the last episode to no longer let us know how many days it's been since the attack.
I didn't even notice, honestly.
Yeah, no, I noticed everything. I have an eye for detail like that. So we get more.
Untrue.
So we get more news position. The 0-day malware has been neutralized. Wayne is back. He's back at the De Niro family house, and I think that's really nice.
Yeah, and it's just all normal between the two of them, like as though they didn't have the weirdest professional interaction imaginable.
You just tell him about Proteus, whatever. De Niro and his wife have a conversation, and she's nudging him to like cover it up. Like she says she doesn't want to lose another child, which, I guess you're a big soft puss like her, so you would not, send your daughter to federal prison.
You can talk a big game because you're like the world's worst empath. So it's like impossible for you to imagine feeling something until it actually happens to you. But there is a 0% chance that you would actually get your own child arrested for treason, which is, by the way, a capital offense. Like, there's no way you would
Matthew Modine mentions
risk
that.
your child going before a firing squad. Like, you can think you would all you want, but like, when and if you have a child, we'll talk about this again, and you will know that, like, no, you would not.
The president visits De Niro and tells him, like, I know about the affair, and I thought about it, and I realized that, like, the reason you hid it wasn't to protect yourself, but because you had a secret love child. And she says, like De Niro is very emphatic that the truth is the truth, but she responds, the truth is the truth, but it's not always the most important thing. And she wants to bury the story as well. Like, there's a clean ending to it, whatever. Like, let's not freak everyone out by revealing this fucking insane conspiracy that occurred within our own government. And fine. So we see De Niro doing his morning routine again. He's going for his jog around his nice large plot of land. And he jogs up to a bird feeder and just stares at it. And through some sort of extrasensory perception or intuition, like reaches into it and pulls out this little like metal bit or bob or like device.
Yeah. I don't think it's extrasensory perception. I think he feels the Proteus feeling. And I think he's remembering, as I do, because I do have a fine attention to detail, that this was the same place where his dog barked a couple times in the first episode when they were walking. I think he's putting together, like his dog was trying to warn him about the Proteus device back in episode 1.
Yeah, the dog was like Scooby-Doo was trying to say, Proteus. Again, that was not a good Scooby. I don't know how Scooby-Doo would say Proteus.
Scooby-Doo impression I've ever heard. Oh my god. The problem is it's so much deeper than that, and neither of us has a deep voice. So
we're at the end, and basically Valerie hands Matthew Modine the 0-day report, like the final report, and she says, okay, we're going to push the bipartisan cover-up angle. De Niro returns to the war room, and the staff gives him a standing ovation. He gives a little speech. Good for him. He's like,
he gives
like
a good
one
at this part.
Yeah, like a good speech this time.
Yeah. Yep.
The news says that his daughter is missing, and De Niro enters the chamber. It's time for the big speech. Matthew Modine is standing behind him. The president's watching from the Oval Office.
Wait, there was one thing that you missed. De Niro and Valerie have a conversation where I don't understand like how she knew this, but like somehow she knows that Proteus isn't real. And she's like, yeah, I guess that you were just stressed. And so this is one of many Proteus like seeming misdirections that happens in this last episode. I wrote, I guess Proteus wasn't a thing, ? I'm sure we'll find out at the end of the episode that it really was. And then my next sentence is, which you're about to talk about. Yep, there it is. Proteus is real. Or maybe not. So dumb. Like there's like a lot of like back and forth on Proteus in these last 10 minutes of the episode.
I thought you were going to say that De Niro learns that the little metal bob that was in the bird feeder, that was another misdirect. Like they looked into it and found that it was just like junk that like somehow managed to fall into it. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Why didn't you say that?
With Valerie. I did. I don't understand like how she knew this, but like somehow she knows that Proteus isn't real. And she's like, yeah, I guess that you were just stressed.
Sure. Okay. So anyways, time for the speech, and De Niro starts reading the speech verbatim off of the teleprompter, but then he hears Who Killed Bambi one more time. And the lyrics, he starts seeing the lyrics on the teleprompter. So there's dead air for a while, and then he goes off script and he tells the truth, because the truth is the truth. So he reads a letter from his daughter where she basically like admits that the conspiracy is real and that she was complicit in it. Talks about Matthew Modine's complicity and like all the other whatever senators or people, representatives who were involved. And like everything erupts into chaos. Matthew Modine yells at De Niro and says, "You just destroyed the country." And De Niro replies, "Every time we can do the right thing, it's another chance to save it." And yeah, that's an appropriate reaction. So now it's time for the epilogue of this series. There's more news position. We couldn't end the show without a little more news position. De Niro throws out his untitled memoir manuscript.
Yeah, I had a thought on this.
Oh yeah, what's that?
I find how dramatic it was, him throwing it away, confusing, and it almost seems like the implication is that's the only copy he has. And it's like, I think that's a printout of a digital file. Like, what's the point of throwing this into the fire? You have to delete the file. Like, that's what throwing it away would be.
Right. The title page wasn't handwritten. I had the same thought. Like, it's still on his hard drive. It's still on his. It's on his Lenovo ThinkPad or whatever the government gave him.
Oh, he's using a MacBook.
Yeah, I'm sure you're right. He's a private citizen.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. He does. Yeah. Great computer.
That's my fine attention to detail right there. That made me notice that. Yep.
So he walks out of his office and the camera kind of like goes down and focuses on a picture of his family back when his son was still alive. The next morning he goes for a jog. His
daughter wasn't in federal prison. Yep.
Yeah, for being a fucking terrorist, he really did fuck up as a dad, huh? So he goes for a jog the next morning and he stops to look out over the water at the city, and we just get this long zoom out away from De Niro over the water, and that is it. That is the end of Zero Day.
Yeah. So you did miss saying one thing that I think is is important to the conversation we're about to have.
Is it?
So in Alex's letter that he reads, she says that she's turning herself in. And I think that that's important because that like gives, I think, like Mullen the space narratively to implicate her. Because to my earlier point, I don't think that this would read as believable to anybody who has children if he really had, like, if she hadn't wanted to get arrested and he'd just gone up and iced her, like, in front of 330 million people. Like, I don't think that you would do that to your child, even if they were a domestic terrorist. Your kid is your ride or die, like, no matter what.
Let's get into the final ratings here. It is time to really discuss in totality Zero Day and how it ended. So to your point, to respond to what you said here, sure, I suppose I will have to defer to you as the parent, but isn't that weak from a storytelling perspective? Isn't it so indicative of this show's embarrassingly milquetoast, effete politics? Wouldn't it be more shocking or challenging if De Niro's character, if Mullen did implicate his daughter, if he had to make that decision but felt so strongly that the truth was important and that the public deserved to know that he was willing to like make this sacrifice? Instead, the decision is kind of made for him,
I suppose.
And it's just so he gets to have his cake and eat it too. And I feel like that's so uninteresting. He's faced with this very difficult.
I don't know. I don't think he really gets to eat it though. You know,
you don't think so?
No, I mean, I think this ending is so stupid. You must agree, right?
Well, sure.
The screenwriters want us to think that he's gotten to eat his cake because, like, he reveals the conspirators at the highest levels of the American levers of power, and we see these like cuts to like various demographics of people looking at their TVs and nodding approvingly and like clapping, and like we've united the far right and the far left, and like, you know, like goofball hippies and like military folks serving overseas, and like, you know, the most diverse coalition of folks ideologically, like everybody is like is supportive of this. And it's like, yeah, that's not what would happen. What would happen is Matthew Modine's character would turn right-wing nutjob immediately. He would go like full MAGA. He would like find some way to sow disinformation about the situation, and 25 to 35% of the country would agree with him, and it would actually drive us further apart than anything else possibly could. Like,
abso-freaking-lutely.
It's like, it's so absurd. And so like, yeah, I think that like the screenwriters want us to think, and like Robert De Niro wants us to think, because we touched on this a little bit in the first episode, he is a very like milquetoast centrist Democrat in his politics, want us to think that like this is the right thing. But like, I actually feel quite strongly that lying would have been the right thing. Like, I think so. I agree with Dreyer and Mitchell, and Dreyer's being self-interested with it, but like nothing good could possibly come from revealing this. Like, it is just going to sow more distrust in institutions, which is so much of the problem that we have right now. Like, there is no way, I think, at this point, with the information ecosystem being what it is and political polarization being what it is, that any person or body could do an audit or investigation into like America's powerful institutions in a way that like 75% or greater of people would agree with. Like, that's just not possible. Like, I don't know. Do you think telling the truth was a good idea? Like that would have the best of the possible outcomes of courses of action in the real world if this happened?
So I'm actually less interested in answering that question itself. What I'm more interested in, having watched the show, is thinking about from a narrative perspective. How could the writers have set that scene up and Mullen's decision to reveal the truth? How could they have like better set that up? And I think they needed to do more with the Mullen character about like his, unwavering, uncompromising ideals, because yeah, you're right. They just present him as like normal center left, like whatever dude, like sure. But I want to know more about why does he feel so strongly about this? Why is he so passionate about it? Because you're right. He might have just like torn the nation apart. Like Matthew Modine might have been right. Like, you just destroyed the nation. How do you come back from that? Like, imagine all the deep state conspiracies that will pop up in the wake of that. And no one could possibly
deep state conspiracy happened and is confirmed in Congress.
How could anyone ever rebut that from now on? Like, you just have to be like, yeah, I guess it could be. It is entirely possible, it turns out. Right. Like, it does actually happen.
Very publicly.
Right.
Yep.
Right. The former president's fucking daughter and, like, the House Speaker. They united across party lines to commit this conspiracy.
We won't say which party. We won't say which party each of them belong to.
We won't say. Yeah. So, yeah, like, sure. But it's obviously not what the show wanted to do. It holds like absolute truth in high esteem, which I think is fair, but you need to justify it, or at least justify the character's rationale more. And the show, despite having nearly 6 hours, didn't really do that effectively.
Yeah. I think that you are treating this as an artistic question, and I just don't think that I agree that it is. I don't think there's anything they could have done. I think they do explain Mullen's character. The point of Mullen's character is he's an institutionalist. He's like a very principled person. He's like a veteran, and he's got like smart feelings about having served, and he's like a practical like dude who's like very pragmatic, and he's like a cop, he's like a former prosecutor, and he loves America. And like, I think that's the way they explain it. And I think what makes it seem unbelievable is that it is unbelievable. It's because like the entire thing narratively, and the reason why they thought it would work is because they have it result in this unification that they show briefly on screen. But like, we know that's not what would happen. So it feels stupid. It is not explained because it cannot be explained. I don't think there's anything they could have done other than making the entire story completely different to like make this make sense.
Right. I want to agree with you. I want to agree with you overall, but disagree with a little bit there. I think you're right. And that it's really foreshadowed by the speech that he gives in the first episode, where he like soothes the angry mob, which is something that would simply never happen in real life. But to your point, I think that, yeah, we're supposed to know him that way, but over the course of the series, we do see him compromise some of his morals. Like when he goes from being emphatically no torture to, that power does corrupt him a bit, and he approves the torture of Dan Stevens' character. So I would hope for some sort of character arc, or I am approaching it from like an artistic point of view. I'd want to know like what's going on with this character beyond the Proteus shit that is making him more, less reluctant to compromise his ideals, and then kind of like a pendulum swinging back in the other direction. Why is he suddenly so principled again? Like, what brought him back to that side? I think it'd be interesting to like either get a closer look into what brought him back to those ideals that he did hold, or if it is a more bitter ending of him landing on the side of compromising those ideals and agreeing to the cover up, I think would also be powerful, because you're right, that makes more logical sense for anyone who has half a fucking brain. So I don't know. I guess I'd want like more in either direction. I think the story could justify either perspective, but does a poor job of justifying the one that it goes with. Let's talk about Proteus. Let's talk about how they wrapped that up.
Yeah. So like, I great segue, because like, I think that this actually was explored in a way that is both stupid narratively, and so it doesn't really make any sense, but like I think is also really muddled with all this Proteus stuff.
Yes.
But I am pretty sure at the end, what we are supposed to understand is that like Proteus is not real, and he really was just going crazy. And like, I think that's their way of showing us that like he doesn't have dementia. It is said by him in the conversation with Valerie, and like I think it's blessed by the screenwriter, since it's discussed authoritatively, that like, I don't know, stress can make you think these kind of things, and like it's just like stress. And I think that is their explanation. Like he was like under a lot of pressure, and it was exacerbated by like ways that what was happening to him was like dovetailing with memories of his son, and like new types of interactions he was having to have with his daughter, and like Roger being around, and like all that stuff. And it's like, it just doesn't work. But like, I don't know. I do think they tried. And I think that that's what makes the Proteus stuff so bad, is that I think that Proteus makes it even harder for them to succeed at telling that story, because they want to have the like fun of like the yank and pull, like twist back and forth. Like, is it Proteus? Is it not Proteus? But like the cost of that fun they're trying to have with the viewer is that like it makes none of it make any sense emotionally, because you never know what you're supposed to feel about any of these things. It's so stupid.
The show, my God, the way that they handled the Proteus reveal, you're right. I agree with everything you said. It blew me away when Valerie learns the revelation that, hey, Proteus is a neurological weapon that could be causing dementia-like symptoms. And I was like, oh, that seems so much worse than like, have you seen season 3 of True Detective?
Is that the one with White Cop and Black Cop, right? Is that season 3?
Mahershala Ali.
Yeah. I could not think of who the actor was. Who's the white actor?
I can't remember his name.
Yeah, I vaguely remember the show. It was good, I think, right? Wasn't it good? It wasn't as good as season 1, but it was a hell of a lot better than season 2.
It was very,
but
very
I
good.
Don't remember it well enough to know what allusion you're about to make. Like whatever it is you're about to say, like I do not remember what reference you're about to make.
So in season 3 of True Detective, for those who don't know, it's an HBO detective show. Blew up in season 1. Like each season is a standalone, it's an anthology series.
It was like the first big anthology show.
The first season
American Horror Story. It was the first good one.
Yeah, it had Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. Season 3 follows Mahershala Ali, and it's a narrative that spans multiple decades. And so you see him like as a young detective investigating this conspiracy, and then you see him later in life. He is suffering from dementia, and his mind is going, and he basically is trying to close this case before he like loses his mind, essentially. And they managed to create this really compelling narrative around, things like memory loss and just, the regret that this character feels, and like these outstanding questions that he was never able to resolve. And so I thought at first, before the Proteus reveal, I thought, okay, I guess they're trying to do a True Detective season 3 thing. And it's going to be some sort of like they're mixing in like his mind is going, Welland's mind is going. And, what are the ways in which that could compromise a person who's afforded such extraordinary power? And then in episode 4, we get the Proteus reveal. And I thought, that's so fucking stupid. Like, instead, it's a neurological weapon that just makes you like have dementia-like symptoms. That's what we're doing with it. And then, to your point, they muddy it up by implying or suggesting that like, oh no, that was a total misdirect. Proteus never, like, it was never anywhere near you. So it was just it was just the effects of stress that made him have these like auditory and visual hallucinations and like scribble who killed Bambi in his notebook all over like a madman. That's how they chose to end that whole like plot thread. It was completely unsatisfying. I couldn't believe it. It was a wet fart.
Yeah. I think that like if we revisit our halftime report, I was really wrong about the way this was going to go narratively, but like that part of it I was right about, because remember I said that that none of this was going to matter. And like, there wasn't going to be a big conspiracy. And like, Mullen actually just was like a dumbass. And like, that kind of. Like, at least like that specific dimension of it, like it really is like very narratively unsatisfying because we've been primed to think it was going to be salacious and not like boring human drama.
Yeah.
But like the boring human drama would make this better storytelling. Like to your point about how like we don't know anything about him. It's like we were tricked into thinking we didn't know anything about him because we were misdirected from engaging with like the emotional undertone of what he was experiencing because we think it's like a salacious sci-fi plot device. And it's like, that's so fucking stupid. Like, oh my God, this show is bad.
Yeah. Well, how about we get into our final ratings then? Mike, what would you give 0 Day out of 5?
Probably 2 stars.
Yeah.
Maybe 2.5 if I was feeling really generous. How about you?
Yeah, you know, it's really funny. I actually wrote 2 or 2.5 in my notes because on the one hand, like you made this point in the first episode, and I think it's really salient. It's mediocre, but the fact that it's 6 hours long makes it worse. Yeah. And so I'm thinking like, okay, compared to a boring political thriller film, this is worse, and I would consider it bad. But because it's only a 6-episode limited series compared to other streaming era shows, it actually is exercising some restraint. So like, do I reward that? And so I think I might have to end up right in the middle, like with a very unenthusiastic 2.5. Sure, I'd much rather watch a boring movie because a boring movie is 2 hours long. So it's kind of tough. Like what scale do you choose to do? Like how much of a curve do you grade this on? Yeah, I guess I'd rather watch a mediocre 6-episode long limited series than like a mediocre any other streaming show that is multiple seasons long and suffers from a lot of the same sort of issues.
I just really wish there had been anything good about it. And I think it ends up in the middle because there was nothing particularly bad about it other than the stuff that's animated us. Like it's so mediocre in almost every way.
Yeah. It really
is.
I
wish there had been anything I loved about it, and I really don't think there was a single thing I loved.
I liked all of the De Niro screen time. I thought he was fun.
Yeah, he was great. I agree, but it's like, I don't know. He's always great in better stories than this.
That's true. We've seen a couple, not many.
Movies are really bad, like, and that's more entertaining than
that's
this.
more.
Like,
that is it's a lot more
down the middle. Like, I don't know.
Like, I cannot in good conscience recommend this.
Yeah, this is pretty low on my, like, if we were going to rank, I think it would be fun, maybe like 25% through, if we did an episode where we like very like, you know, it kind of ranked all of the, or maybe we could do like a blog post or something, each of us did a ranking of all the things we've watched. I think of all the things we've watched so far, like even though I'm rating it right in the middle, I think it's pretty close to the bottom in terms of how much I enjoyed it because it was just so boring.
Yeah. Like, I think it'd be fun to do.
Boring.
Some kind of special episode partway through. We'll figure it out. We'll talk more about that offline. I have so 2 or 2.5 stars is where we're landing on this. I have something that I think you'll enjoy. After I finished the show last night, I checked Letterboxd and I was looking through the popular reviews, and you know the reviews are pretty middling overall, but there are some popular reviews that are positive, and I thought it would be fun to read 3 of them to you. And
that's a great idea.
Viewers.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So. This first review, this is 4 stars, and I'll omit the user information. I'm not trying to like dunk on anyone, you know, especially, but I just want to read this. So this is the first review, 4 stars. This user writes, "One of the best things I've watched on Netflix in a long time, a gripping political thriller that keeps you hooked from start to finish. Robert De Niro delivers a fantastic performance as always. His portrayal reminded me of Alec Guinness's George Smiley. I loved how the story delivers its political message without picking a side." That last line really made me lose it.
That's like really good. I like that.
Incredible that for that, that's fun. Like that's fun with like how we interpret art differently. But like for that user, that was a feature and not a bug. That's what I hated the most about this series. It was so toothless.
It's really bad. I agree. Yep. We'll talk about that more. Don't worry.
Yeah.
I still have a lot more to say about that. Yep.
Oh, okay. The second review, also 4 stars. It is shorter. This review says, "Ignore the bad reviews, for they know not what they do. A political thriller for grown-ups, and an excellent one at that." Go fuck yourself. That's my response. That's my comment on that review. Like I think that is so incredibly condescending.
So condescending. I agree.
For grown-ups, I love political thrillers. I look at my Letterboxd history. I love that genre. This was not what I would describe as thrilling. Yep. It's barely political. It's a political thriller that's neither political nor thrilling. There's my fucking review of Zero Day. I'm going to slap that on Letterboxd when I'm doing the edit. I'll make sure to add
2.5 stars.
Yeah. Yep. Quote. The last one. This one really got me. This is a 4.5 star review on Letterboxd.
Can you imagine giving this 4.5 stars, like the headspace you'd have to be in?
Oh, I can't.
You'd have to be like in the same headspace that Roger was in, like a half second before his death. just like in the throes of a heroin overdose to give this 4.5 stars.
This user wrote, people who say this was slow have a lack of attention span and no appreciation for true drama. Bless their souls, for they will never be able to sit through a Shakespeare play and enjoy it.
Oh my God, comparing this to Shakespeare is so funny.
Incredible. The fucking audacity of that person to compare Netflix's really Zero Day to Shakespeare. And again, so condescending. I have sat through Shakespeare plays. You are comparing the greatest author of the English language to a very mediocre straight to streaming series. Incredible the fucking brain worms that some people have. I thought you would enjoy
really
those.
Good. I did enjoy that. That was a great segment.
Mike, we're getting closer to the end here. Is there anything that you would like to recommend instead of Netflix's Zero Day?
Yeah, I have so much to say in this section. So I would like to recommend Alex Garland's Civil War.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Instead of Zero Day. Yeah, it's so funny that you brought it up earlier in the episode. This is a total coincidence. So I really like... So Mike and I, we talked about this on the pod before, but Mike and I, we watched every movie that played in our local IMAX theater last year, in addition to a few that we went out of town for, a few special.
It was the year of IMAX.
Yep, the year of IMAX. Hashtag year of IMAX. My wife made coffee table books for us. They're really cool.
Oh, so good. Love it.
Maybe we'll post some stills on the blog if anybody ever listens to this podcast.
We haven't blogged yet. I don't know why you think we would start now.
But if anybody was listening to the podcast, we would start a blog.
Sure.
We try to engage through different channels, but there's no one to engage with right now.
Why don't you talk about this fucking terrible movie?
So Mike and I watched a lot of movies together last year, and one of the 52 movies that we watched together in IMAX was Alex Garland's Civil War. And I loved Alex Garland's Civil War, and Mike did not. And I think that, so Mike's criticism of it was that it was toothless, specifically because, President Bad Guy, Nick Offerman, the specifics of his political allegiance and beliefs and the nature of the Civil War, like whom we're supposed to understand are the good guys and the bad guys, is not explained. And I do not agree that that's bad storytelling. I think it's one of the best things about it. And I think for me, nothing solidified the fact that I feel that way more than watching this, because I think that this show really puts into stark relief when the choice to withhold that kind of color serves the narrative and serves the theme of the story, and when it detracts from it. And I think that in Civil War, it is deployed with a purpose, and in this, it is deployed without a purpose. The point of Civil War is that it's pretty short, right? It's only like an hour and 50 minutes long. It is largely a bombastic war action movie where very little happens narratively, and the point is that it's not telling you very much about what is happening, and it's trying to create a story that's more allegorical and more plug in your perspective framework than a specific story that is trying to be really prescriptive about what happened. You're supposed to just imagine however you think this might be able to happen. So it works, from my perspective in Civil War, really well, and is not weak storytelling. We see it as really weak storytelling in this story because it really cuts a very stark contrast to how specific this narrative is about everything else. We learn so many details, so many more details than you would ever need to know about the particulars of what's happening in this 6-hour miniseries. And so when they never say that Alex is a Democrat and Matthew Modine is a Republican, it feels stupid because it is very clear that like they made that choice creatively so that that person would write that Letterboxd review about how this was like a mature political thriller that like didn't take sides in the debate. Like it's like pandering. Civil War is not pandering. The point of Civil War is that it doesn't matter what your political views are. Fascism is bad. And so like you should think that President Nick Offerman, whether he was a Democrat or a Republican, was bad for like trying to seize extrajudicial authoritarian powers while he was in the White House. And so like, I don't know. I think Civil War is really fun. I think I gave it 4.5 stars. It was one of my favorite IMAX movies from last year, and I'll stand by it. And I think that you should really reflect on the difference between the way that withholding of detail is employed in a largely visual story like Civil War versus one that is like very detail and narrative driven like this, and why it works in one context and does not work in the other. So
listen, I respect your recommendation. I think it's exciting that, you know, we finally have our first controversial recommendation of the show. I strongly disagree with everything you said. I've thought about Civil War since we watched it. You know, it was a fun IMAX experience, certainly in that nice square aspect ratio.
Great action movie. Yep.
I gave it 3 stars in my initial review, but the more I think about it, it's one of those films that the more I think about, the less I like. So I think if I rewatched it, or if I was to review it now, I'd probably give it like a solid 2.5. I mean, I'm not going to rebut your entire recommendation. I just personally felt like it wasn't insightful and had very little worthwhile to communicate to its audience. I don't see any value in that sort of narrative that it tried to deploy and that this show tried to deploy, where they just present something to the viewer and hope that they like manage to, you know, whatever. Like, I don't know. It didn't work for me at all. I thought it was just like a waste of time, essentially. I had very little to say about any of these issues.
Philip, can you watch Civil War, please, and write a letter about who between us you agreed with?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be Philip. It could be anyone. It could be anyone.
I just feel like he's the one who might do it.
My I came at this from the tech conspiracy theory,
okay, that's fun. Yep.
The tech conspiracy theory kind of angle, like the hacker show or movie piece of media. And so my recommendation, I don't know how many opportunities I'll have to recommend this, so I had to seize it, is the 2015 Michael Mann film Black Hat.
Fuck yeah. Let's go.
Yeah. I love
I had a feeling that was what you were going to say as you started. This is not controversial at all. Black Hat fucking rules.
Well, it's not controversial between us, but so Black Hat, for those who don't know, Michael Mann, I mean, one of the greatest in the fucking game, director of Heat, The Insider, Thief, so many all-time greats. I love it. One of my favorite directors.
Ferrari, that's my favorite.
Ferrari. He's joking there. But yeah, Jesus, Collateral, Miami Vice, which I love. Mike doesn't. So this was his film from 2015. Manhunter. I mean, so many. I mean, God Jesus Christ.
So many great films. Yep.
Incredible filmography.
What was that one that I watched last year with
Thief?
What's it called? The Safecracker movie. What was that movie called?
Thief.
Didn't you watch that too? Thief. Did you say that one?
I said it 3 times. Director of Heat, The Insider, Thief, so many all-time greats.
Oh, you said that one? Yeah, Thief is really good.
Incredible. And I've already recommended one of his films in Public Enemies, but I like Black Hat more. So Black Hat, it is a distinctly post 9/11 cyber thriller, and it's just it's such an interesting film tonally because it stars Chris Hemsworth as this really macho black hat hacker named Nicholas Hathaway. He's totally jacked. He's also a master hacker and codesmith.
Judo, black belt,
and he also speaks with a cartoonish Brooklyn accent. It's so funny. He's such a funny, He's like a cartoon character. He's like a cartoon character's idea of what like a cool macho guy is. He's kind of like Johnny Bravo, but smarter.
Yeah. It's not a cartoon. I want to make sure you quote yourself right here, because what you said about this when you watched it was like so perfect. It wasn't a cartoon character's. You said it was a little boy's idea of what a cool person is, and like it so is. Like he's a genius genius hacker. He's tall and like beautiful. He has like a chiseled jaw. He's ripped. He's like a black belt. He's really good at sports, and like it's so funny. He's like a joke as a character.
You're absolutely right. Oh, I nailed it the first time. Yeah, it's so good.
It's like if you ask like a 7-year-old boy to describe like what he wants to be like when he grows up, this is the exact person he would describe, and it's like no one's like that. It's impossible. Right? It's so funny.
But this film, it was a box office bomb. It received a mixed critical reception, and it seems like it's developed a small cult following in recent years. So listen, I'm going to tell the audience, it's a vibes movie. You have to go into it and appreciate the vibe of it. It's so self-serious, and the direction is so dynamic. It's beautiful digital cinematography. It's just such a cool vibes movie. I honestly, I'm kind of tempted to watch it tonight. Like that's how fucking.
Also thinking, I kind of want to go watch Black Hat.
It might be a Black Hat night. It might be. It's just such a cool movie, and the difference between like when Michael Mann shoots like a film, everything is so kinetic and dynamic. Even when it is someone like hacking, he knows how to compose these scenes in a way that it's electric, versus 0 Day, where it's just flat and gray and it's two people sitting across from each other in an office, or it's the news going off on a small screen in the distance or whatever. It's a night and day difference. Yeah. So Black Hat would be my recommendation. I mean, listen, I think they're both of our recommendations are worth watching. I'm not really a fan of Civil War, but I would love to hear if any of our listeners have watched the film or do watch the film. Let us know what you think. Pithy. And on that note, it is time for us to wrap the show up, because we're not doing a roll today. We already did the roll before we started 0 Day. Our next film is going to be the 1997 James Mangold film, Copland.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yep.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot to say about it. I'm excited. Get back into the normal routine. We'll start rolling the dice afterwards and then getting back into our random sequence of films. You have anything else to say about 0 Day, or should we just wrap this bad boy up? No, it's not worth it, right? It's not worth saying anything else about it. We've already talked too much.
We already talked more about this show than anyone ever has or will. And that much is like 10 times more than anyone should. So
that is depressing to think about. Yeah. I actually think you might be right. Like, we might have devoted on that note. Follow us on Letterboxd. I'm Mike back at you. He's Mike the Fab. Email us with your thoughts and feedback at ourherodeniro@gmail.com. Just make sure to follow live show rules. Rate us in Apple Podcasts or Spotify or your podcast app of choice. And got to thank Caroline for the podcast artwork, because it brings me great joy to look at it every single time. I'm Mike. With me was Mike. No relation. Oh, yeah. Well, there you go. I guess we could do it that way. Well, whatever. We're Mike and Mike. No relation. Yeah. And we'll see you next week with another film in Robert De Niro's filmography.
Great episode.